Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 10. We'll be beginning from verse 47 onwards. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamham bande Shri Gurum Deen Tarinam Parmananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. And very happy Balram Jayanti to all of you. Tanra lila Varni ya chena Vrindavan das yeba avashisht age kariba prakash. Tanra his lila pastimes, Varni ya chena described, Vrindavan das Thakur, yeba whatever, avashishta remained undescribed, age later in the book, kariba I shall make, prakash manifest. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has vividly described the pastimes of Haridas Thakur in his Chaitanya Bhagavat. Whatever has remained undescribed, I shall try to explain later in this book. Verse 48. Tandra Upashakha Yata Kulina Grami Jana Satya Raja Adi Tandra Kripara Bhajana. Tanra Upashakha, his sub-branch, Yata all, Kulina Grami Jana, the inhabitants of Kulin Gram, Satyaraj, Adi, heading the list, Tanra, his Kripara of mercy, Bhajan, recipient. One sub-branch of Haridas Thakur consisted of the residents of Kulin Gram. The most important among them was Satyaraj Khan or Satyaraj Vasu, who was a recipient of the mercy of Haridas Thakur. Purport. Satyaraj Khan was the son of Gunaraja Khan and father of Ramananda Vasu. Haridas Thakur lived for some time during the Chaturmasya period in the village named Kulin Gram, where he chanted the holy name, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and distributed his mercy to the descendants of the Vasu family. Satyaraj Khan was allotted the service of supplying silk robes for the Jagannath deity during the Rath Yatra festival. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu answers to his inquiries about the duty of householder devotees are vividly described in the Madhya Lila chapters 15 and 16. The village of Kulinagram is situated 2 miles from the railway station named Jograma, or the New Cord line from Howrah to Burdwan. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very highly praised the people of Kulin Gram, and he stated that even a dog of Kulin Gram was very dear to him. Verse 49. Shri Murari Gupta Shakha Premera Bhandar Prabhura Hridaya Draveshuni Danya Yanra. Shri Murari Gupta Shakha branch, Premera of love of Godhead, Bhandar store, Prabhura of the Lord, Hridaya the heart, Drave melts, Shuni hearing, Danya humility, Yandra of whom. Translation. Murari Gupta, the 21st branch of the tree of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was the storehouse of love of Godhead. His great humility and meekness melted the heart of Lord Chaitanya. Purport. Sri Murari Gupta wrote a book called Sri Chaitanya Charita. He belonged to a Vaidya physician family of Sri Hatta, the paternal home of Lord Chaitanya, and later became a resident of Navadvip. He was among the elders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya exhibited his Varaha form in the house of Murari Gupta, as described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat Madhya Khanda 3rd chapter, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his Mahaprakash form. He appeared before Murari Gupta as Lord Ramchandra when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu were sitting together in the house of Srivas Thakur. Murari Gupta first offered his respects to Lord Chaitanya and then to Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu, however, was older than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore Lord Chaitanya remarked that Murari Gupta had violated social etiquette. For he should have first shown respect to Nityananda Prabhu and then to him. In this way, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Murari Gupta was informed about the position of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and the next day he offered obeisances first to Lord Nityananda and then to Lord Chaitanya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave chewed pan or betel nut to Murari Gupta. Once Shivananda Sen offered food to Lord Chaitanya that had been cooked with excessive ghee, and the next day the Lord became sick and went to Murari Gupta for treatment. Lord Chaitanya accepted some water from the water pot of Murari Gupta, and thus he was cured. The natural remedy for indigestion is to drink a little water, and since Murari Gupta was a physician, he gave the Lord some drinking water and cured him. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the house of Srivas Thakur in his Chaturbhuj Murti, Murari Gupta became his carrier in the form of Garud, and in these pastimes of ecstasy, the Lord then got up on his back. It was the desire of Murari Gupta to leave his body before the disappearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But the Lord forbade him to do so. This is described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhya Khanda, chapter 20. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu one day appeared in ecstasy as Varah Murti, Murari Gupta offered him prayers. He was a great devotee of Lord Ramchandra, and his staunch devotion is vividly described in the Chaitanya Charitamrit, Madhya Lila, 15th chapter, verses 137 through 157. Verse 50. Pratigraha nahi kare na lay kar dhana, atma vritti kari kare kutumba bharan. Pratigraha nahi kare, he did not accept charity from anyone. Na, not. Laya, take. Kar, anyone's. Dhana, wealth. Atma vritti, own profession. Kari, executing. Kare, maintained. Kutumba, family. Bharan, provision. Translation. Srila Murari Gupta never accepted charity from friends, nor did he accept any money from anyone. He practiced as a physician and maintained his family with his earnings. Purport. It should be noted that a grihastha or householder must not make his livelihood by begging from anyone. Every householder of the higher caste should engage himself in his own occupational duty as a Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya, but he should not engage in the service of others, for this is the duty of a Shudra. One should simply accept whatever he earns by his own profession. The engagements of Brahmana are Yajna, Yajan, Pathan, Dan and Pratigraha. A Brahman should be a worshipper of Vishnu, and he should also instruct others how to worship him, which is of course Vishnu. A Kshatriya can become a landholder and earn his livelihood by levying taxes or collecting rent from tenants. A Vaishya can accept agriculture or general trade as an occupational duty. Since Murari Gupta was born in a physician's family, Vaidya Vamsha, he practiced as a physician, and with whatever income he earned, he maintained his family. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, everyone should try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the execution of his occupational duty. That is the perfection of life. This system is called Devi Varnashram. Murari Gupta was an ideal grihastha, for he was a great devotee of Lord Ramchandra and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By practicing as a physician, he maintained his family and at the same time satisfied Lord Chaitanya to the best of his ability. This is the ideal of householder life. Verse 51. Chikitsa karena yare ha iya sadaya, deha roga bhava roga dui tar kshaya. Chikitsa, medical treatment. Karena, did. Yare, upon whom. Ha iya, becoming. Sadya, merciful. Deharog, the disease of the body. Bhavarog, the disease of the material existence. Dui, both. Tar, his. Kshaya, diminished. As Murari Gupta treated his patients by his mercy, both their body and spiritual diseases subsided. Purport: Murari Gupta could treat both bodily and spiritual disease because he was a physician by profession and a great devotee of the Lord in terms of spiritual advancement. This is an example of service to humanity. Everyone should know that there are two kinds of diseases in human society. One disease, which is called adhyatmic or material disease, pertains to the body, but the main disease is spiritual. The living entity is eternal, but somehow or other, when in contact with the material energy, he is subjected to the repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. The physicians of the modern day should learn from Murari Gupta. Although modern philanthropic physicians open gigantic hospitals, there are no hospitals to cure the material disease of the spirit soul. The Krishna consciousness movement has taken up the mission of curing this disease, but people are not very appreciative because they do not know what this disease is. A diseased person needs both proper medicine and a proper diet, and therefore the Krishna consciousness movement supplies materially stricken people with the medicine of the chanting of the holy name or the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and the diet of prasadam. There are many hospitals and medical clinics to cure bodily diseases, but there are no such hospitals to cure the material disease of the spirit soul. The centers of the Krishna consciousness movement are the only established hospitals that can cure man of birth, death, old age, and disease. Verse 52. Shriman Sena Prabhura Sevak Pradhan Chaitanya Charan Vinu Nahi Jane An. Shriman Sena, Prabhura of the Lord, Sevaka, servant, Pradhan, chief, Chaitanya Charan, the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Vinu, accept, Nahi does not, Jane, know, An, anything else. Shriman Sena, the 22nd branch of Chaitanya tree, was a very faithful servant of Lord Chaitanya. He knew nothing else but the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport: Shriman Sena was one of the inhabitants of Navadvip and was a constant companion of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Verse 53. Shri Gadadhar Das Shakha Sarvopari Kaji Ganera Mukhe Yenha Bolaila Hari. Shri Gadadhar Das Shakha, another branch, Sarva Upari, above all, Kaji Ganera, of the Qazis, that is the Muslim magistrates, Mukhe, in the mouth, Yenha, one who, Bolaila, caused to speak, Hari, the holy name of Hari. Translation: Shri Gadadhar Das, the 23rd branch, was understood to be the topmost, for he induced all the Muslim Qazis to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. Purport: about 8 or 10 miles from Calcutta, on the banks of the Ganges, is a village known as Indiyadha Gram. Srila Gadadhar Das was known as an inhabitant of this village, Indiyadha Vasi Gadadhar Das. The Bhakti Ratnakar 7th wave informs us that after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gadadhar Das went from Navadvip to Katwa. Thereafter he came to Indiyadha and resided there. He is stated to be the luster of the body of Srimati Radharani, just as Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami is an incarnation of Srimati Radharani herself. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sometimes explained to be Radha Bhav Dyuti Subalita, or characterized by the emotions and bodily luster of Srimati Radharani. Gadadhar Das is the Dyuti or luster in the Gaura Ganudesh Deepika 154. He is described to be an expansion of the potency of Srimati Radharani. He counts among the associates of both Srila Gaurahari and Nityananda Prabhu. As a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was one of the associates of Lord Krishna in conjugal love, and as a devotee of Lord Nityananda, he is considered to have been one of the friends of Krishna in pure devotional service. Even though he was an associate of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, he was not among the cowherd boys but he was situated in the transcendental meadow of conjugal love. He established a temple of Sri Gaurasundar in Katwa in 1434 Shakabd, which is equivalent to AD 1512, when Lord Nityananda Prabhu was empowered by Lord Chaitanya to preach the Sankirtan movement in Bengal. Sri Gadadhar Das was one of Lord Nityananda's chief assistants. He preached the Sankirtan movement by requesting everyone to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This simple preaching method of Srila Gadadhar Das can be followed by anyone and everyone in any position of society. One must simply be a sincere and serious servant of Nityananda Prabhu and preach this cult door to door. When Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu was preaching the cult of Hari Kirtan, he was a magistrate who was very much against his Sankirtan movement. Following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Gadadhar Das one night went to the house of the Qazi and requested him to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Qazi replied, "All right, I shall chant Hare Krishna tomorrow." On hearing this, Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu began to dance and said, "By tomorrow you have already chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, so simply continue." In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika verses 154 and 155, it is said, "Radha Vibhuti Rupa Ya Chandra Kanit Pura Vraje Sa Shri Gauranga Nikate Dasavamshyo Gadadhara Purnanand Vraje Yasid Baladev Priya Grani Sapi Karya Vashad Eva Pravishat Tam Gadadharam." Srila Gadadhar Das is considered to be a united form of Chandrakanti, who is the effulgence of Srimati Radharani, and Purnananda, who is the foremost of Lord Balram's very dear girlfriends. Thus, Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu was one of the associates of both Chaitanya Prabhu, Mahaprabhu, and Nityananda Prabhu. Once while Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu was returning to Bengal from Jagannath Puri with Nityananda Prabhu, he forgot himself and began talking very loudly as if he were a girl of Brajabhumi selling yogurt. And Srila Nityananda Prabhu noted this. Another time, while absorbed in the ecstasy of the gopis, he carried a jug filled with the Ganges water on his head as if he were selling milk. When Lord Chaitanya appeared in the house of Raghav Pandit while going to Vrindavan, Gadadhar Das went to see him. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so glad that he put his foot on his head. When Gadadhar Das Prabhu was present in India, he established a Bal Gopal Murti for worship there. Sri Madhav Ghosh performed a drama known as Dana Khanda with the help of Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Gadadhar Das. This is explained in the Chaitanya Bhagavad Antya Lila, Antya 1, 5.318 to 94. The tomb of Gadadhar Das Prabhu, which is in the village of Indiyata, was under the control of some Yogi Vaishnavas and later under the direction of Siddha Bhagwan Das Babaji of Kalna. By his order, Sri Madhusudan Malik, one of the members of the aristocratic Malik family of Nari Kela Danga in Calcutta, established a Pathbari, which is a monastery there in the Bengali year 1256, which is 1849 AD. He also arranged for the worship of a deity named Sri Radhakanta. His son Balai Chand Malik established Gauranitai deities there in the Bengali year 1312, 1905 AD. Thus, on the throne of the temple are both Gauranityananda deities and Radha Krishna deities. Below the throne is a tablet with an inscription written in Sanskrit. In that temple, there is also a small deity of Lord Shiva as Gopeshwar. This is all described on a stone by the side of the entrance door. Verse 54. Shivananda Sena Prabhura Bhritya Antaranga Prabhu Sthane Yaite Sabe Layana Yanra Sangha. Shivananda Sena, Prabhura of the Lord, Pritya servants, Antaranga very confidential, Prabhustani in Jagannath Puri, where the Lord was staying. Yaite, while going, Sabe all Laina took, Yandra whose Sangha shelter. Translation: Shivananda Sena, the 24th branch of the tree, was an extremely confidential servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Everyone who went to Jagannath Puri to visit Lord Chaitanya took shelter and guidance from Sri Shivananda Sena. Verse 55. Prativarshe Prabhu Gana Sangete Laya Nilachale Chalena Pathe Palna Kariya. Prativarshe, every year, Prabhu Gana, the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, Sangete, along with Laya, taking Nilachale to the Jagannath Puri, Chalena goes, Pathe on the road, Palna, maintenance, Kariya, providing. Every year he took a party of devotees from Bengal to Jagannath Puri to visit Lord Chaitanya. He maintained the entire party as they journeyed on the road. Verse 56. Bhakte kripa karena prabhu e dina swarupe sakshat avesh ar avirbhav rupe. Bhakte unto devotees, kripa mercy, karena bestows. Prabhu Lord Chaitanya, these Tina 3 Swarupe features, Sakshat directly, Avesha empowered by the Lord, Ar and Avirbhav appearance, Rupe in the features. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestows his causeless mercy upon his devotees in the 3 features, his own direct appearance Sakshat, his prowess within someone he empowers Avesha, and his manifestation, which is Avirbhav. The Sakshat feature of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is his personal presence. Avesha refers to the invested power like that invested in Nakula Brahmachari. Avirbhav is a manifestation of the Lord that appears even though he is personally not present. For example, Sri Shachi Mata offered food at home to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu although he was far away in Jagannath Puri. And when she opened her eyes after offering the food, she saw that it had already been eaten by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Similarly, when Srivas Thakur performed Sankirtan, everyone felt the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even in his absence. This is another example of Avirbhav. Verse 57. Sakshate Sakala Bhakt Dekhe Nirvishesha Nakula Brahmachari Dehe Prabhura Avesha. Sakshat directly, Sakala all Bhakta devotees Dekhe see Nirvishesha, nothing peculiar but as he is. Nakula Brahmachari Dehe in the body, Prabhura the Lord's. Avesha symptoms of power. Translation: the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in every devotee's presence is called Sakshat. His appearance in Nakula Brahmachari as a symptom of special prowess is an example of Avesh. Verse 58. Pradyumna Brahmachari Tanra Age Nama Chila Nrsimhananda Nama Prabhu Pache the Rakhila. Pradyumna Brahmachari Tanra his Age, previously Nama name, Chila was, Nrsimhananda Nama the name, Prabhu the Lord, Pache afterwards, Ta certainly, Rakhila kept it. Translation: the former Pradyumna Brahmachari was given the name Nrsimhananda Brahmachari by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Verse 59. Tanhate haila Chaitanyera avirbhav alaukika aiche prabhura aneka swabhav. Tanhate, in him, haila, there was Chaitanyera of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Avirbhav appearance, alaukika, uncommon, aiche, like that, prabhura of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, aneka various swabhava features. Translation: in his body there were symptoms of Avirbhav. Such appearances are uncommon, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed many such pastimes through his different features. Purport in the Gaura Ganudesha Deepika 73 and 74, it is said that Nakula Brahmachari displayed the prowess or the Avesha of Pradyumna and Pradyumna Brahmachari, the appearance Avirbhav of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many hundreds and thousands of devotees of Lord Chaitanya among whom there are no special symptoms, but when a devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu functions with specific prowess, he displays the feature called Avesh. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally spread the Sankirtan movement, and he advised all the inhabitants of Bharatvarsh to take up his cult and preach it all over the world. The visible symptoms of devotees who follow such instructions are called Avesh. Shivananda Sena observed such Avesh symptoms in Nakula Brahmachari, who displayed symptoms exactly like those of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Chaitanya Charitamrita states that in the age of Kali, the only spiritual function is to broadcast the holy name of the Lord, but this function can be performed only by one who is actually empowered by Lord Krishna. The process by which a devotee is thus empowered is called Avesha, or sometimes it is also called Shakti Avesha. Pradyumna Brahmachari was formerly a resident of a village known as Piyagarigancha in Kalna. There is description of him in the Antilila of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, 2nd chapter, and in the Antikhand of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, chapters 3 and 9. Verse 60. Aswadila esab rasa sena shivananda vistari kahiba age esaba ananda. Aswadila tasted these saba all rasa mellows sena shivananda sena. Vistari describing vividly, Kahiba I shall speak, Age later on, Esaba all this, Ananda transcendental bliss. Srila Shivananda Sena experienced the three features of Sakshat, Avesha and Avirbhav. Later I shall vividly describe this transcendentally blissful subject. Purport: Srila Shivananda Sena has been described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj as follows. Shivananda Sena was a resident of Kumarhata, which is also known as Ali Sahara, and was a great devotee of Lord. About 1.5 miles from Kumarhata is another village known as Kanchadapada, in which there are Gaura Gopal deities installed by Shivananda Sena, who also established a temple of Krishnarya that is still existing. Shivananda Sena was the father of Paramananda Sena, who was also known as Puridas or Kavi Karnapura. Paramananda Sena wrote in his Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 176 that two of the gopis of Vrindavan, whose former names were Veera and Duti, combined to become his father. Srila Shivananda Sena guided all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya who went from Bengal to Jagannath Puri, and he personally bore all the expenses for their journey. This is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya chapter 16 verse 19 to 27. Srila Shivananda Sena had three sons, namely Chaitanya Das, Ramadas and Brahmanand. As mentioned above, this last son later became Kavi Karnapura and wrote the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika. His spiritual master was Srinath Pandit, who was Shivananda Sena's priest. Due to Vasudeva Datta's lavish spending, Shivananda Sena was engaged to supervise his expenditures. Sri Shivananda Sena actually experienced Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's features of Sakshat, Avesha and Avirbhav. He once took along a dog while on his way to Jagannath Puri, and it is described in the Antalila 1st chapter that this dog later attained salvation by his association. When Srila Raghunath Das, who later became Raghunath Das Goswami, fled his paternal home to join Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his father wrote a letter to Shivananda Sena to get information about him. Shivananda Sena supplied him all the details for which he asked, and later Raghunath Das Goswami's father sent some servants and money to Shivananda Sena to take care of Raghunath Das Goswami. Once Sri Shivananda Sena invited Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home and fed him so sumptuously that the Lord felt indigestion and was somewhat sick. This became known to Shivananda Sena's eldest son, Chaitanya Das, who gave the Lord the kinds of food that would help him his digestion, and thus Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased. This is described in Antalila 10th chapter verses 142 to 151. Once while going to Jagannath Puri, all the devotees had to stay underneath a tree without the shelter of a house or even a shed, and Nityananda Prabhu became very angry as if he were greatly disturbed by hunger. Thus he cursed the Shivananda's sons to die. Shivananda's wife was very much aggrieved at this and she began to cry. She very seriously thought that her sons had been cursed by Nityananda Prabhu. Certainly they would die. When Shivananda later returned and saw his wife crying, he said, "Why are you crying? Let us all die if Sri Nityananda Prabhu desires." When Sri Shivananda Sena returned and Srila Nityananda Prabhu saw him, the Lord kicked him severely, complaining that he was very hungry, and asked why he had not arranged the food. Such is the behavior of the Lord with his devotees. Srila Nityananda Prabhu behaved like an ordinary hungry man, as became an ordinary hungry man, as if complained that he was hungry and asked why he had not arranged food for his food. As if completely dependent on the arrangements of Shivananda. This is how the Lord acted. A nephew of Shivananda Sena named Shrikanta left the company in protest of Nityananda Prabhu's curse and went directly to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, where the Lord pacified him. On that occasion, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed his toe to be sucked by Puri Dasa, who was then a child. It is by the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he could immediately compose Sanskrit verses. During the misunderstanding with Shivananda's family, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered his personal attendant Govinda to give them all the remnants of his food. This is described in Anta Lila, chapter 12, verse 53. Verse 61, Shivanandera Upashakha Tanra Parikara Putra Bhritiya Adi Kari Chaitanya Kinkara. Shivanandera of Shivanansena, Upashakha, sub-branch, Tanra his, Parikara associates, Putra sons, Bhritiya servants, Adi, all these, Kari taking together, Chaitanya Kinkara servants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The sons, servants and family members of Shivananda Sena constituted a sub-branch. They were all sincere servants of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Verse 62, Chaitanya Das Ramadas Ar Karnapura Teen Putra Shivanandera Prabhura Bhakta Sura. Chaitanya Das, Ramadas is Ramadas, Ara and Karnapura is Karnapura. Teen Putra, three sons, Shivanandera of Shivanasena, Prabhura of the Lord, Bhakta Sura of the heroic devotees. Translation: the three sons of Shivanasena named Chaitanya Das, Ramadas and Karnapura were all heroic devotees of the Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Das, the eldest son of Shivanasena, wrote a commentary on Krishna Karnamrita that was later translated by Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his paper Sajjan Toshani. According to expert opinion, Chaitanya Das was the author of the book Chaitanya Charita, also known as Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was written in Sanskrit. The author was not Kavi Karnapura as is generally supposed. This is the opinion of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Sri Ramdas was the second son of Shivananda Sena. It is said in the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 145 that the two famous parrots named Daksha and Vikshana in Krishna Lila became the elder brothers of Kavi Karnapura, namely Chaitanya Das and Ramdas. Karnarupa, the third son, who was also known as Paramananda Das or Puri Das, was initiated by Srinath Pandit, who was a disciple of Sri Advaita Prabhu. Karnapura wrote many books that are important in Vaishnava literature, such as Ananda Vrindavan Champu, Alankar, Kaustubha, Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, and the great epic Chaitanya Chandroday Nataka. He was born in the year 1448 Shakabda, which is AD 1526. He continually wrote books for 10 years from 1488 to 1498. Verse 63, Shri Vallabh Sena, Ara Sena, Shrikanta, Shivananda Sambandhe, Prabhura Bhakta Ekanta. Shri Vallabh Sena, Ara and Sena, Shrikanta Sena, Shivananda Sena, Sambondhani in relationship, Prabhura the Lord's Bhakta devotees, Ekanta unflinching. Shri Vallabh Sena and Shrikanta Sena were also branches of Shivananda Sena, for they were not only his nephews but also unalloyed devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport: when Sri Nityananda Prabhu rebuked Shivananda Sena on the way to Puri, these two nephews of Shivananda left the company as a protest and went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri. The Lord could understand the feelings of the boys, and he asked his personal assistant Govinda to supply them prasadam until the party of Shivananda arrived during the Rath Yatra Sankirtan festival. These two brothers were members of the party led by Mukunda. In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 174, it is said that Gopi, whose name was Katyayani, appeared as Shrikanta Sena. So we'll finish our reading for today here, and we'll resume from verse 64 of 10th chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.